Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Tracy Show. I'm Tracy. As you can see, with today we have not one but two guests. I'll let them introduce themselves here in just a moment. Since you're not used to seeing the Tracy Show on Saturdays, this was a Tracy forgot that she had an interview scheduled. So I greatly appreciate Matt and Pete rescheduling this and being willing to do this. First of all, before I let them introduce themselves, please subscribe to this channel. This channel needs your support very badly. We lost a couple of subscribers. I was really close to that 200 and somehow I got down below it. So if you're watching this or you watching later, subscribe again. Also support me on Patreon starting at $2 a month. You can help me not to have that little duck in the corner and to keep me free of the duck, which will show up if it was free. And I can't go live on my Facebook page and I can't go live on my Twitch page. Support starts at $2, which is literally 50 cents a week. Support. And remember to like this page, share this page, comment, and definitely subscribe. And whichever one of you wants to go first can introduce themselves.
All right. Thanks, Pete. So I'm Matthew Byers. I am the chair of the Maryland Forward Party. And with me is my colleague, Pete, who I'll let introduce himself.
Yeah, my name's Pete Oliver Kruger. It's a long name, so people just call me Pete OK. And I am the head of the priorities and strategy for Maryland Forward Party.
Okay, so first question, I gotta start off with what is the overall mission of the Forward Party?
Okay, that's a good question and a great place to start. So the overall mission of the Forward Party is to take down the temperature of politics and bring back conversation. I think that would be a good summary of it. So we're trying to change the way that we do politics in Maryland and across the country so that there's less animosity between people and more finding common ground.
And I'm looking at Pete like, are you wanting to say something? Because I've never interviewed two people at once. I'm used to just one. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute.
Oh, no, he described it quite well. So, it's a question that we get asked often is what does the Forward Party stand for? What is your platform? A variety of different things. And we just do things differently. We are looking to create more dialogue. We're looking to solve some of the problems of polarization. That's our goal getting into this stuff. And if we can support certain issues, we will, because it's going to get us to the point of being able to have more and better dialogues. But we really are in a place where we want to solve problems is what our goal is. And we have a bunch of different strategies that help us to get there. But we really try to be different in how we approach this and how we think about things.
So if I'm wrong in anything I'm about to say, please correct me. This is the party that Andrew Yang found. Am I right in that? Andrew Yang along with some other people.
Right. So it's a sort of yes and answer to your question. So yes, Andrew had something to do with it. There are also several other people involved with it. Christine Todd Whitman being one of them, Carrie Healy being another. And it's not just the Andrew Yang party. So it's not the Andrew Yang gang. And so we need to be really clear about that because a lot of people are trying to associate it with him. But it's not Andrew. It's everybody that's come after Andrew that has turned it into a credible, viable, durable party that we're trying to strive for, that stands for at least three principles at the moment, which is some sort of voting reform like ranked choice voting and a change to the way that we do primaries so that we have single primaries or nonpartisan primaries, depending on what you want to call them, kind of like what you see in Alaska and California, and what's coming up in Nevada and what you see in Maine. Maine is ranked choice voting, not primaries. My bad. And the third one is independent redistricting commission, so that we get rid of gerrymandering. And so a lot of the time people are like, so what's your platform? Well, that is pretty much our platform. And they're like, well, that's not very much. And we're like, yeah, because the first thing we need to do is figure out what everybody's priorities are. We want to ask people what the problems are that they want to solve, rather than telling people what our solutions are, which is what most parties do. We want to have discussions about what the problems are and then how to solve those problems in a prioritized fashion. And that's one of the things that Pete's working on. So, Pete, did you want to maybe mention pep talks a little bit?
Yeah, I can certainly get into it. But I want to toss it back over to Tracy since her show here. So her question there was kind of like, where are we coming from? And we have come together as a variety of different parties, different movements that have been collecting, over the years. So certainly Andrew Yang is one of the more, vocal as well as visible and more well-known names. But the organization itself has mixed together with a bunch of different organizations across the United States, combined up, created allies, and that's one thing that we're just really good at, is looking across boundaries at other people who are also just interested in accomplishing the same things and forming coalitions. And one of the ways that we do that is with techniques like what we call our pep talk, which is about identifying problems and figuring out which problems we want to solve together, but letting go of how we solve those problems, as long as giving people freedom and ability to be able to choose their way, different ways of solving problems, because there are many ways to get to the same destination.
Right now, you mentioned something that I deeply care about is gerrymandering and how it specifically affects those in the Black community and how much
Mhm.
damage it has done. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with gerrymandering, kind of briefly explain what it is. And I know you said you don't identify problems, but since you said that's one of your missions is to kind of say goodbye to gerrymandering, what it is that you want to do. Because I think there are solutions to gerrymandering. We've just never discussed them.
Mhm.
Sure, sure. So we have identified three problems, as I just said. The three principles are the three problems that we absolutely want to solve, and we figure will change the face of politics as we know it. And we can get into that later. But to address your specific question about gerrymandering, um, it's basically where the politicians choose their own districts and the boundaries of those districts and the people in those districts, and they configure them in such a way that they maintain that district. And so that district is slated to be for a specific political party. And what that means is that there's very little chance of the voters actually overturning that district and changing its party. And it also results in very weirdly arranged districts. I mean, if you look at the political map of Maryland, specifically, I was looking the other day at Bowie, and the state legislature around Bowie is just crazy. I mean, there's it goes in and out and around and up and around Bowie, and then comes back down, and it's like, what 3-year-old with a crayon drew this? And why did they draw it? Well, they drew it because they wanted to maintain it as a strong Democratic district, and that works for the Democrats, and that's great. But that doesn't work for the people of the area. The people of the area should get to choose who their legislators are, not the legislature.
I do
And
want to
so,
interject. I'm sorry to interrupt. I do want to interject a question because we've always, or the media has always, especially the MSDNC, yes, that's what I call them, everyone, CNN, DNC, has always said this is a Republican issue and that Republicans gerrymander. But you just said something that I don't think very many people realize, that there are Democrats that gerrymander positions for themselves.
So Maryland is in the top 10 of most gerrymandered states in the entire country. And it's a 2-to-1 majority of Democrats to Republicans. So yes, directly answering your question, absolutely Democrats gerrymander themselves. And they do it on purpose to maintain power. And so
I'm shocked. I can't believe that. I mean, not the Democratic Party. No.
From messages. Tian Treb.
One of the things that we do find is that there are patterns to how politics is done right now. And one of those patterns is about maintaining power and maintaining control. And those people that have majorities, it's kind of like, nothing corrupts. What's that phrase of? No, I'm blanking on it now. But like,
absolute power corrupts absolutely.
There we go. That's the one I'm thinking of. So we find that, in most places, when the balance gets above a certain rate, then something else takes over, and people start using these techniques that they've seen and they've learned elsewhere. And I honestly don't know where it started and who started doing the first gerrymandering of maps, but they've both learned from each other ways to do this, and then they justify it in certain ways. And like, oh, well, because that state is gerrymandered for control for the Republicans, then therefore we need to gerrymander our state so that we can bring more Democrats into the House, or or to various different districts. There's all these different reasons that sort of come up because they all end up playing the same game. And so when we look at this stuff, we're like, we would rather just not have anybody playing games. We'd rather see a much more fair, a much more equivalent, whichever word you want to use, a much more scientifically thing, so that we know that the votes that are happening reflect the people in those districts. And we believe that on a more of a principled level on how that should be happening. And we believe it should be applied, all across the country.
And so, just as a piece of trivia, gerrymandering started with Elbridge Gerry, who was a signer of the original Declaration of Independence. So it goes that far back.
Okay.
And so, in answer to your original question, what do we want to do about it? We want to set up independent redistricting commissions, so that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans, nor Forward for that matter, has complete control of how the districts are arranged, and so that they're arranged in a logical fashion that makes sense to people. Right now, the way it's done is the legislature draws the map every year. And there was, by the way, there were independent redistricting commissions in the past couple of legislative sessions that their recommendations were rejected by the legislature. So the problem is not that we can't do independent redistricting commissions. The problem is that the people in power don't want to see them actually happen.
Yeah, and that's so bothersome, because if you're a, you all are in Maryland, I'm in Indiana, but if you're like an outsider, especially third party, and you want to run for office, well, your opponent has already drawn themselves a job. You literally stand no chance of even, unless some miracle happens and you do get an influx of cash, or someone famous endorses you. You stand little chance of changing that district, because this person has drawn a job for themselves.
Well, it goes beyond that, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the statistics say that something like 90% of all of the seats in the country go uncontested. Now, I could be wrong. It might not be as high as 90. It might only be 75. I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but they've already been agreed by the various parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, that they're not actually going to compete for those seats, that they're deep red or they're deep blue. And so there's no actual competition for those seats. And so you see occasionally, this is a hot seat. And how many of those do you see? Not very many.
And I read a statistic that said that most, and you may have mentioned this, that in some cases, some seats are ran unopposed. That means like nobody's challenging them. No one's saying, hey, John Smith, I'm going to primary you if you're in the two-party system, or if you're outside the two-party system, I'm going to run against you because you're not doing X, Y, Z. That makes it so, like, again, I'm saying I sound like a record player, but it makes it hard for a person that really wants to serve who has the desire to run for office to serve their constituents. And I'm glad, although there's some things about the Forward Party, I'm like, okay, I'm going to question them, and I'm going to get to those because I'm glad you both are here to explain them to me.
And we want them questioned.
I understand a need to work together because we all, whether you live in Maryland, Indiana, Alabama, Texas, we all live together. So on some level, we're going to have to work together to get to the ultimate goal.
That's right.
Here comes my first concern. Now, to be honest, I have not been to and I'm not talking about the Maryland Forward Party because I'm assuming you're getting your directions from the National Party. Is it, or am I wrong? Is it a top-down party like this is what National says and then the states are going to do this? Or is it, no, the states say this and this is what National does?
So that's the one big important distinction for us is we are not a top-down organization, and they have designed it that way. So from the national on down, there are certain things that we are working on nationally that every state is working on, and it's those three things that Matt said earlier. So it has to do with the single primaries, some form of ranked choice voting, and getting rid of gerrymandering. That's something that we all kind of agree with across all of the various different states. But beyond that, National doesn't come down and say, you are going to do this, you are going to, because that is part of the problem with how a lot of politics is run right now. Now, one thing I do in my job is I do a lot of coaching inside of organizations, and it's the same thing. In the organizations where the executives decide what's going to happen, and then they push those things down, and nobody's allowed to think for themselves, the organizations really start to bog down and flounder, and they have a lot of problems. The best, most efficient, and effective organizations are the ones that are bubbling up from the bottom, where you have great ideas that are being coordinated and are being built out of collaboration. And so that is something that Forward Party National set up consciously. So we have some connections in with an organization up top, but we very much get to operate as our own entity. And we are actually like a separate legal entity, the Maryland Forward Party, with affiliations with the National Forward Party. We put together our own methods of working on different things. We have our techniques that we use, which are actually different than the way some of the other states interact. And it becomes these wonderful natural experiments of watching how, well, this state does this and that state does this and this one. And so we get to pull and share the best ideas from each other on parallel at the state level, figure out what works, and then bubble up those best ideas up to the national level.
Okay, thank you for answering that because I was curious because, the DNC, RNC is definitely top down.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely top down. But something that is of concern to me, I make no apologies. I am what you would probably call the radical left. I'm proud of it. I wear it with a badge of honor. If I believed in tattoos, I would probably get leftist tattooed on me. And I read something on the Forward Party that said not far left, not far right, but forward or something in that vein. And I'm like, well, what? I guess I was thinking, well, what's so wrong with the far and far? Where does that verbiage come? And maybe I'm wrong. Again, I could be completely wrong, but I was just like, okay, well, that's not going to be for me because I'm definitely far left.
So the verbiage you read is you've quoted it incorrectly.
Okay, thank you.
Well, let's start there. So it's not left, not right, forward, and the indication there is this is not the Democratic left. This is not the Republican right. This is a new way forward down the middle, a moderate way forward, where we listen to all sides and we try to find the places that we all agree, because there's more that unites us than divides us. So it's not left, it's not right, it's forward. So that's the difference. It doesn't say that we can't include some far left ideas, and it doesn't say that we can't include some far right ideas, depending on what those are and depending on how people feel about them. And we can take, polls and votes and what have you about it.
We have
But
a saying
nothing
that
is
we use
excluded.
that comes from the Pixar movie Ratatouille. Have you ever, if you're familiar with that, there's a line at the end after everything that's going, and the critic in that movie is talking about everything that happened. I don't want to give it away. I think everybody's seen Ratatouille, but still, I don't like to give away the endings to
No,
movies.
you might as well, because I don't like movies. Like I really can't. I can't stand. I prefer stage plays. So I'm like, no, I haven't seen it.
All right. Well, all through the movie, there's been this quote from this character that we never meet. It says, that not, that a great chef can come from anywhere, or is the name of his book is Anyone Can Cook, and it becomes this whole thing where this critic is, how is it that not everybody can cook, not everybody, and he gets to the end of the movie and he delivers this wonderful monologue line where he goes and he's talking about how he understands now that it's not that everybody can be a great cook, but a great cook can come from anywhere. And so we apply the same principles here, that it's not that every idea is going to turn into be a great idea, but a great idea can come from anywhere. So we want to listen to everybody, and we want to listen to everywhere that's there. And we want to toss these ideas back and forth and test them out and find out what does work in what situations and where does it start to fall apart in other situations, so that we can build and incubate and grow the best ideas regardless of where they come from. So that's why we put in our phrasing and say not left, not right, but forward, because we don't care if it's left. We don't care if it's right. We don't care where it comes from. If it pulls and takes America forward, that's all we care about.
Okay, so first of all, Matt, thank you for the correction. Because I was like, I can't remember what it was. So thank you. Another thing that really it concerns me about any party. This is a concern about any party. Democrat, Green, Socialist, PSL, Communist, doesn't matter. And since I have people on with the party, I want to ask this specific question. As a Black American, I feel like we are the most underutilized, underserved, underappreciated community in this country, maybe with Hispanics being a close number two. I feel like both parties, the Democrats, definitely take the Black vote for granted. Definitely, no doubt about it. I don't even think the Republicans have a plan to reach Black people, because I have my own opinions about the Republican Party that I won't get into, since you all are about coalition building, and what I was going to say probably is not coalition building. Talk about the Maryland forward parties, if there is an effort, which I hope there is, to reach not people of color, because I can't stand that phrase. I'm specifically talking about Black people. What is your effort in Maryland? What is your effort in the National Party? And again, I'm assuming there's an effort. And if there's not, do you plan on there being one?
Yes. Well, I'll say that one of our efforts, or one of our approaches, is representation. That, we are out there recruiting and bringing in people of any background, of any race. And so we do have some people who are on our board who are Black, and we are always looking for more voices. We have candidates that we're affiliated with that are Black, and just talking about specifically Blacks, because that's what you're talking about. We reach out. We stop, we talk, we listen, we understand what their issues are, and we make that part of our listening effort. So we actually have, a larger population or percentage of Blacks, I think, in Maryland than they certainly do in a lot of other states. So that's just a part of our culture. It's just a part of the way that we do things. Is yeah, they are part of who we are as Marylanders.
And
I don't want to I don't want to use the phrase "all lives matter" because that'll get me in a lot of trouble.
Yes, it will.
Yes, it will.
So
Just notice that will get you in a lot of trouble.
I'm just saying I'm not using that, but I do want to say that diversity matters, and so we have reached out to all different communities, like Pete was saying, not just the Black community. So we have an Indian on our board, and an Indian American on our board. We have an Asian American on our board. We have a Black woman on our board. I'm trying to remember if we have any other ethnicities on our board at the moment. But like Pete said, we have an Indian American candidate that we've endorsed. We have a Black American candidate that we've endorsed. We have a white woman candidate we've endorsed. 2 white women that we've endorsed. So we're not picking and choosing based on race by any means or any stretch of the imagination. It's the quality of the candidate that's more important. And so that's where we stand. And we have a candidate pledge that we make our candidates agree to that talks about how they're going to interact with other candidates, their opponents, and with their constituents, and just in general. And I invite you to read that candidate pledge. It's something they sign and something we sign, and we consider it a social contract between us.
Now, you talked about candidates that you endorse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you what my understanding is, and you'll probably tell me, no, Tracy, that's not completely right. But hey, I was wrong about one thing. I could probably be wrong about something else. I'm thinking that when you endorse a candidate, that candidate can be Democrat, Republican, Green, Libertarian, PSL, Constitution Party. Did I get at least that part right?
Absolutely. We at the moment we have one elected independent forwardist who ran as an independent candidate and is affiliated as a forwardist. He's president of the City Council of Laurel. Very nice guy, James Cole. And we have affiliated because we're not actually a party yet. So this is the conundrum we're in. We're not a recognized political party in Maryland, and so we've affiliated with various candidates, most of whom are Democrats at the moment. We've tried reaching out to the Republicans, have not successfully yet made a connection there, but we're striving to do that. But yes, they could come from any party as long as they are willing to sign the pledge and they meet our moral and standards and ethical standards, which is part of the pledge. And that includes, I'm just going to be blunt, somebody who's a Trumpist, not going to make our cut. Somebody who's a communist, also not going to make our cut probably, because those are extreme positions, and we're not going to take extremists. Because we're looking for people to build coalitions, not people to break apart.
So would you say that the Forward Party is more a centrist organization?
I would say so. That's why I started with moderate. Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the horseshoe theory? There's this one that's been floating around that we think of, and it's get painted that there's a far left and that there's a far right, and it's on this continuous line, and so then the moderates are like right here in the center. But the horseshoe theory is pointing out that actually, when you get out towards some of the extremes, they start to look very similar to each other. So some examples they give is that there's a lot more similarities, for example, within the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and the libertarian wing in the Republican Party, whereas they might have been seen as much more polar opposites, but they actually have a lot of things in common. The Greens and the Libertarians have a bunch of things that they agree about, and that they see. We find that folks who are thinking about what are the best ways for us to manage this country and best way to move forward come up with a lot of the same ideas. And it's not as polarized as we think it is. It's really the people who are like, dead set on has to be Democrat and nothing else, or has to be Republican and nothing else, which are creating the extremes. And there's a whole variety and range of ideas and perspectives. So when we say that we're centrist and we come from the middle and we come from that area, it's because we're looking in all directions for great ideas, no matter where they come from, that it puts us in the center of that thing. But it's also hard to describe us as centrists. I mean, moderate's probably a better thing because we're trying to create a moderate force between the polarizing extremes within our situation. But centrist may be less accurate for how we sort of see ourselves and where we see the views of people around us.
Unless
Go
you're
ahead,
taking the
sorry.
centrist, if you think of the horseshoe as almost connecting to a circle, and the centrist is right in the center of that, then you can call us centrists. So
That's
Keith's
probably where
absolutely
I'm thinking of. That's probably where my thinking is going. Only because a moderate to me, and maybe it's my definition of moderate, right? Because when I think of a moderate, I kind of think those words to mean the same thing, right? They both they're similar in terms of centrist moderate, because you're not left, you're not right, you're just somewhere in the middle. So I tend to use the word centrist. I may mean moderate, but I tend to, just because I'm more acclimated to say centrist, and knowing how I think about centrists, they're more willing to work on certain issues with people that are like if they're green, they're gonna work with somebody Republican. Whereas I'm not gonna work with a Republican very well that supports Trump. That's just not gonna happen in any way, shape, form, mean. There's nothing. And if somebody uses this word one more time, I'm gonna scream bipartisanship. Don't come on this show using that word. I cannot stand the word bipartisanship.
well, that's
Because
exactly what we're trying to change, because we
yeah,
don't want two parties anymore.
yeah, it's like, okay, there's other parties, and you all are pretty much the same. But when you talk about another thing you said that just got, and we'll get to the comments. Please keep the comments coming. Remember the new format. I don't go to comments as they come in. I kind of save them and then I bring them up. So keep the comments coming. I promise I'm going to get to them. But you said that when you look for a candidate, that they have to sign a pledge. Um, and I'm assuming this pledge can be found on your website. Um,
Yes.
do you have in Maryland? Do you have like a meeting with this candidate?
Yes.
Is it okay? So
Yes.
talk about the process from like the start. Let's just say I live in Maryland and I'm
Sure.
running. Okay, I'm just gonna run. Let's see. I'm not gonna pick the a duopoly system. I'm running as under the Justice for All party.
Okay.
I'm making up a party right now because I don't want to pick Democrat or Republican. What? And I want the forward party of Maryland to endorse my candidacy. What is it that I have to do?
So the first thing you would do is you'd contact one of us, probably through our website, and you'd say, "Hey, look, I'm interested in getting your endorsement." And then we would respond, obviously, and say, "Okay, so what we have a list of questions we ask people. What are you willing to sign our pledge? First of all, have you read our pledge? Is this something that's even a starter as a question? Because if you're not willing to sign our pledge, then we're just done." So, there's just no point. So there's a couple of steps along the way. Then we have them come in for an interview with the board, and the board will ask them a whole bunch of questions, and we'll try to get a feel for the candidate. Again, we're looking for candidates that are willing to work with others, to be cooperative, to be collaborative. We're not interested in candidates that are, it's my way or the highway, because those are not going to make good forward candidates. So we're trying to gauge the candidate. And then the board will go away and it'll do a little bit of its own research, and check out the candidate. Is what they said true? Is there any background information we should be aware of that the candidate hasn't told us about? Because we want to avoid any embarrassment. And then, if all goes well, the candidate will sign the pledge. We'll sign the pledge. We'll have them talk to National and make sure that National doesn't find anything in their background that we missed, and then we'll publish an endorsement.
Okay, so here is the next question, and I'm going to actually direct this one to Pete. No offense, Matt, but I'm going to direct this one to Pete. Has there ever been a time, because I would imagine I'm probably not, well, let me go backwards. People have always asked me, Tracy, why don't you run for office? And there was a time I would seriously consider it, but now I have a couple of problems. Number one, I tend to say exactly what I think, and I don't have this thing called a filter. It doesn't exist for me. I just tend to, I'm just going to say what I think, and that's going to be it. And it's either this way or no way. That's me. So I know that I probably wouldn't make a good forward party candidate. And that's okay, right? Because I still have valid ideas that I can offer to whomever. But has there ever been a time where you thought, this person should not ever hold office under any circumstances, period?
I'll put it this way, because I do have a filter.
That's a good thing to have. I just don't possess this because I grew up around elderly people and they just say whatever. And I'm like, okay, so guess what I'm going to do?
Oh, there you go. No, to go back to some of the things that Matt was talking about. So we spent a lot of time on that candidate pledge because we wanted to be upfront about it. And we also wanted to work out amongst ourselves as to what are those clear things. And so we find that there's certain things that we're looking for. So one of our phrases that we use is grace and tolerance. And there's a lot of people out there who are not graceful about what they do and who are not tolerant of other people. Another thing that's in our pledge is the idea of diverse thinking. And there are some people who are not diverse in how they consider or the things that they think about. And they become very polarizing. And that's actually another thing that's inside of our pledge as well, is we're looking for people who are not going to be using, defamation, harassment, discrimination, or have campaign materials that are divisive or entrenched in tribalism. That's actually a lot of folks that are out there who would not be good quality forward candidates. They're not people that we want to associate with. Now, some people will be doing that because that's how you have to behave right now within the system in order to be picked up by the Democratic Party or by the Republican Party. But what we do is we'll go to them and just say, hey, like, if you would like to affiliate with us, we're doing things differently. These things are important to us. If you do these things, we will disassociate ourselves from you. Are you willing to stop these things? And some of the people we've gone to have said, yeah, I can get behind that. We're going to stop doing that. And some people were like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to get into names or anything, but, somebody was, would go back to Trump. Trump fits one of those things. He's been involved in harassment. He's been involved in discrimination things. He's been involved in, actions, that are currently being, handled in our legal system as for overturning, laws and, for the, sorry, words are escaping me right now, but, for the election and about election interference, all that kind of stuff. And our basic thing is the rule of law and the Constitution and support of the Constitution. If anybody breaks that, we're not interested. And we've had some candidates come in and say, well, I'm not going to sign until I find out whether or not Trump is going to be the nominee, because then I'm going to have to fall in line and align, with the party. And we're like, all right, so then you're not the person for us. Because if you are not willing to, on principle, go with this thing, or if you're going to change your party alignment, or you will break this pledge because your party tells you to break it, then you're not our candidate.
Absolutely. That I can agree with. So at this point, we have some comments that I want to get to. And remember, before I get to the comments, please, 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 pretty please share this video. Share it to your social platforms. This broadcast after this will be available on my website, TRACYMediaLLC.com. I'll share it on my platforms, but just kind of like a friendly reminder. So we got some folks checking in. Then the first comment comes from Marlon, better known as First Love. For now, it looks like people are going to have to go through the courts like what Wisconsin had to do, and that's in regards to our gerrymandering conversation.
Yes. We have a difficulty inside of Maryland, which is that Maryland does not allow petitions, doesn't allow anything to go on the ballots from the populace itself. Everything that goes on our ballots must come through the legislature. So we're stuck in a spot. So that if we want to do anything inside the states, you have to get a majority of the state, this would be House or Senate or probably both, to put forward a resolution, to put it on the ballot for people to vote for it. And the bar is really, really high. And we don't have the ability to write our own people's petitions, our own people's amendments, and put it on ballot initiatives and create all those sorts of things. And
Right.
so,
and that's one of the questions we get often. Often I get asked, well, why don't you just join the Democrats? And or why don't you join the Republican Party? Why do you need a new party? And the answer to that question is neither of those parties wants to change the system because they're very happy with the way that the system is. And so the only way that we can change the system, because like Pete said, there's no such thing as a citizen petition in the state of Maryland to initiate a new law. So there is citizen petition, but only to overturn an amendment, or a law that's been passed by the legislature. But that's another issue altogether. But since there's no way for citizens to initiate a new law, all laws have to go through the legislature. So how do you initiate a new law in the legislature? You get a legislator elected to the office to then put a bill on the floor. And so to do that, doing it as an independent is very, very difficult. So we're putting in the time and energy and effort to build a credible, viable, durable, additional party in Maryland.
So
yeah,
I thought Indiana. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just going to say, so we don't even have the ability to do like what Wisconsin said. And that's why for us as a strategy inside of Maryland, it's so important for us to be able to get party status, because there's so much that we can only do if we have candidates that are elected into office.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say. I was like, oh, Indiana is exactly the same. Okay. We cannot sign any type of petition. Like everything has to go through. And we're a heavily Republican state, as everybody knows. And I think if I was going to guesstimate, I would say if Indiana had 100 legislators, 85 of them would be Republican. The Democrats just kind of like disappear somewhere. I don't know where they go to, but they must be at having coffee at Starbucks or wherever it is they're at. But we can't, we face kind of the same thing in terms of forming new parties. Our ballot access laws are kind of different, but it's the same. Not that I'm glad to hear that Maryland's having problems too, but this is, it's like, oh, so we're not by ourselves in terms of having the citizenry, the people that pay the taxes, the people that are supposed to be serviced by the government, not getting those services because they can't initiate things that could actually benefit people. I mean, I'm not phrasing it right because I'm just kind of like it popped in my head like that because it just doesn't make sense. And I'm thinking about if you're saying this, to get a legislator to do that, they would have to be highly principled to say, hey, let's put this candidate. I don't care about my party. Let's just do the right thing. When most of the politicians, I don't live in Maryland, so I'm just assuming this, are probably so involved in their party politics that they're not going to go against the party because they know what will happen to them, because that party will punish them for going
Exactly.
outside that system. So it's like,
But
how do
that
you
you've
break that
identified.
cycle? It's like, how can it be broken? Because that's what I think, that's what I'm kind of frustrated with as a third party voter. It's like, how do we break the cycle?
Well, and
Yeah.
that's why we're doing forward, because we're trying to break the cycle by changing the cycle. So, and we're actively working against the terminology third party, by the way. So you may have heard me use additional party just a moment ago. And I did that because if you say third party, then it sounds diminutive. It sounds like, oh, the first two parties are great and the third party is eh. That's not the way it has to be. In case
Okay.
anybody's forgotten, the Republican Party was once the third party. Lincoln was elected in a four-party race in 1860. So Lincoln was elected as a third-party candidate. So it can be done. But we're not running a presidential candidate, and I'm not saying that we should. But what I'm saying is I don't like the term third party because
I don't either. Thank you. And I'm going to say additional part. Thank you. See, I didn't see the things that I can learn. I can learn. I can learn. If you tell me something, I'm doing it. See how open I am.
there you go.
So next comment comes from Theus, who's better known as Complex Mind Simple Man. To eliminate party-driven gerrymandering, people would have to initially elect people to do that. Just hoping and complaining gets nowhere. The people have to want it.
And that's exactly what we were just saying, is that we have to create an additional party to be able to elect legislators, to be able to get laws on the floor.
Yeah. And actually going back a little bit to what you were saying before, is you're talking about if you go back to that idea of the horseshoe or the circular nature of things and sort of the center of the circle, if you give yourself sort of that options, you find certain things like we did in Maryland, which is that there are more independents in Maryland than there are Republicans. But independents they can't vote in any of the primaries. And in Maryland, almost everything happens in the primaries. Very few things are decided into the thing. And then part of that is by design. I imagine it might be very similar for you all in Indiana, that if you're going to try to overcome the Republicans as the Democratic Party and ignore your independents, there's no way you can get enough people to be able to do anything. It's when you do that coalition building and you pay attention to the people who, like in Maryland, are registered, I'll say in Indiana, as Republicans, because you have to be registered as a Republican in order to vote in the primary where it matters. But they're not really Republicans. They're independents. We have the same thing in Maryland. We have a ton of independents who were registered as Democrats because that's how they get to decide who governs them. But they don't consider themselves as Democrats. So we're going out, we do our listening thing, we find out all of those people who are looking for something new, no matter where they come from, and building a coalition. And that's why we believe that the best and strongest party can actually come out of the center, come out of the middle, and have a power and the chance to be able to actually make a difference.
And
so I'm looking at the comments. And
we're gonna get to them. We get to them. Trust me, I'm getting to them. Because I want to say hello to Mac. Mac hasn't been here in a long time. So Mac, thank you. And pretty much he had the same thought that I did about the centrist party. I'm glad I wasn't the only one that was thinking that. And both these comments are coming in faster than I can get to them. Next one, independents are just disaffected, non-committed D's or R's. I don't necessarily agree with that.
I don't either.
It says nothing of their political philosophy.
I think there are, if I could chime in a little bit on that. So,
and get to this question here, because I think this is this is also a fair one. So get to what you're getting, but address this question, please.
Yeah, no, there are definitely independents who are independents, but part of the problem of sort of the independent party or the independent movement is it kind of set up this idea that we don't affiliate. which doesn't help you build coalitions. So background, I grew up in a Republican family, and had a lot of folks that I ended up, getting around Democratic, and I do vote in the Democratic primaries now. My first election that I was in, I actually voted for Ross Perot. And so I got a learning very early about, the impact of spoilers. And that if you're voting for somebody who doesn't look for coalitions, but who's looking to like stand out or be separate, or like, you're just going to cause trouble. And so that really is where it comes down to. There are people who are like, I'm independent, I don't want to associate with anybody else. Those are not forwardists. But there are people who say the same thing that we do, which is there's great ideas in the Democratic Party. There's some great ideas in the Republican Party. There's some great ideas in the Greens. There's some great ideas in the Libertarians. There's just great ideas out there. There's great ideas from the progressives. Great ideas should have a chance to live no matter where they come from. And that is our definition of, and I don't like to use the word independence, but that's our definition of the moderates or the centrists, if you use that circular kind of thing. And what we want to change that into is the forwardists, where no matter where the great idea comes from, we'll take that idea forward.
And now, if you can answer Marlon's question, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Oh, which is, you're going to break this cycle by changing this. You're going to break the cycle by changing the cycle. How though? That's his question.
So, yeah, this is exactly why the first three things that we're doing is voting reform, single primaries, and independent redistricting commissions. So those three things, if we can get those three enacted, it will completely change politics as we know it. So with something like ranked choice voting or approval voting or star voting, all of which you can go look up, they're very interesting, and I'm not going to go into them right here. Voters are then able to vote their conscience. And, if you want to vote for a Green Party candidate, you can vote for a Green Party candidate. If you want to vote for a Libertarian candidate, you can vote for a Libertarian candidate. But they're able to vote their conscience and then have a second choice when their first choice doesn't succeed. And what that does is it brings more voices to the system. It brings more points of view to the system. It also makes, by the way, the candidates who are running appeal to voters for their second and third choices, which increases the civility of the candidates, because they have to appeal not just to their base, but to second and third choices as well. And so that will change politics completely, just that alone. But then when you add in nonpartisan primaries or single primaries, and you get all of the candidates from all of the parties running in the same primary, and you don't have a Democratic primary, and you don't have a Republican primary, and you don't have a forward primary or a Libertarian primary, but you have a primary. Okay, if you can do that and you get all the candidates running in the same primary, then one, you get money out of politics from the point of view that, at least in Maryland, we are currently paying public funds for party politics, which I think should be illegal. And two, by using ranked choice voting or something like that in nonpartisan primaries, the voters will actually be able to choose the candidates that they want to appear in the general election. So if a district, for instance, wanted to elect 4 Republicans as the top 4 in the nonpartisan primary, and they wanted 4 Republicans to go to the general election in November, fine, that is their choice. Okay, but if they wanted to elect a Democrat, a Republican, and a Green Party member or 2 Democrats, a Republican, and a Green Party as their top 4 to go to the November election, that's also okay. It should be what the people want, not saying, okay, we're going to have a Democrat regardless of whether or not you want one. We're going to have a Republican whether or not you want one, and anybody else that manages to get ahead by running independently. That's not right. And so,
I'm not meaning to cut you off, but that's where the frustration comes in, because I definitely support additional parties now that I know that term. Thank you. And the struggle And I know you didn't say ballot access. I didn't hear you mention anything about ballot access in terms of an additional party getting on the ballot. But that's not that I'm making suggestions to the forward party, but that needs to be a part of it because I have interviewed too many candidates on this platform where they say this is their number one issue. They cannot get on the ballot because in the state of Indiana, you have to have 30, I'm just going to estimate up 37,000 people just to get on the ballot.
Well,
Now,
I'll tell you what it is.
37
I'll
sounds
tell
like
you
a
what it
low
is in Maryland.
number, but for 4 or 5 people to go out and get those, and then we know that because the Indiana Election Commission they aren't inclined to have an additional party candidate on the ballot. They're going to
No.
throw away some of those signatures. So it's this roundabout thing. It's like
Right. We've got the same
and
thing
it's like,
going on. We've got the same thing going on here in Maryland, and independent candidates that can run as independents legally in Maryland require 10,000 signatures to get on the ballot.
just
Although,
10? Oh wow, I would love to have just 10.
do you know what? Do you know it also costs 10,000 signatures or requires 10,000 signatures for us to become a political party? So, from our point of view, it makes more sense to become a political party and then invite others to because we're trying to be a big tent party to start with. It makes more sense to invite all those independents to come run as forward candidates and not be as restrictive as the Democrats and the Republicans are.
Yeah, I'm just like, wow, 10,000, just 10,000. Maryland is, how many people does the state of Maryland have?
About 9 million at the moment.
So you got 3 million more than the state of Indiana. And it takes us 37, well, to be honest, it takes us like 45 because they're going to throw out some.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I wish we had 10,000 we could do, just go to Indianapolis and collect signatures. Okay, it's done. Nope. And
I
that's
feel like, no matter where you are, there's always somebody that's got it worse. Like we're envious of like Florida because they just had to go file paperwork.
Exactly. It's like, why can't we be in Florida? All you gotta do, file the work. They're on the ballot. That's it. Thank you.
So why can't you? You asked and answered your own question already.
I know I did.
Why can't you do this? Because the Democrats and the Republicans don't want you to be able to do it.
Exactly. And I hate that we have judges in our state, and I will get into this in a separate video, and this has nothing to do with Maryland. This is a solely Indiana issue. That said, oh, well, your argument is good, but it would disrupt the system. What do you mean it would disrupt the system? That's what a additional candidate is supposed to do, right? Like that's the whole mission, purpose, goal of a third additional party candidate is to disturb the system. But because they know, oh, we don't have the money to appeal to the Supreme Court, and who knows how they go because they're deeply conservative now, it just repeats itself, which causes people to stay at home because the two-party system stinks. And it just snowballs and snowballs. And my goal has always been, we've got to break through it. And even though with, like I said, some of the concerns that I have with the forward party, and I'm going to get to my next one here in a second, I'll listen to any additional third party. Because the two-party system, I'm done with it. It's like you fix the game. It's professional wrestling. We already know who's going to win. We know who you're going to run. What are we doing?
If I could toss out a wording change, wordings are so fascinating, and there has been one that is put out there that those judges are using, which is disruptive. Disruptive sounds negative and bad, and we need to avoid being disruptive. But I think what we are doing is actually strengthening our democracy. And if we can change the way that we talk about this, if we go in and say, oh, yeah, we're trying to disrupt the system, then people are going to push back against us. But no, we're going out, listening to people, talking to people, understanding what they want, trying to create fair and equitable representation. We are strengthening the system. Not actually. It's the current system that is disruptive.
That's a better word. Thank you. See, again, people, I'm learning today. This is why I do the show. When I say something wrong, um, there are people that will correct me. Thank you. Strengthen. Although I will say, hey, I'm going to, Tracy wants to disrupt. But strengthen is a better word.
You know
See,
what? There's a whole group of tech people that call themselves disruptors, and they purposely disrupt the system, and they claim it, just like lesbians claim the word lesbian. They claim it because they feel it's a strong thing to be doing to disrupt the system, and so I don't see. I mean, I see Pete's point that the word disruptor sounds negative, but I also see them as positive. So
yep. And here's another question. I'm really curious about this because I'm unclear about this. I am unclear about whether the Maryland Forward Party or the National Forward Party wants to run its own candidates. When I visited the website, the national one, because I haven't visited the Maryland one, to be honest. When I visited the national website, I was unclear. I'm like, okay, so are they going to run candidates or are
so
they not going to run candidates of their
so
own?
all candidates, just I can answer this one quickly and easily. All candidates are local.
Okay.
All candidates are local, even down to president. The president has to run independently in each state. And so the national is not running candidates because they can't run candidates because they're not in the state. Only the state parties can run candidates. So all House of Representatives, all senators, all city council people, all state legislators, they're all local and they're all run by the state parties or
Okay.
put forward by the state parties.
So let
Yeah.
me rephrase my question then. Is the Maryland Forward Party going to run its own slate of candidates?
When we get recognized political status, yes.
Okay. Okay.
With one
And
important clarification that we are not going to try to put up a presidential candidate, for president of the United States.
Absolutely.
So it's one very purposeful thing that I actually enjoy about how the Forward Party has put itself together, which is
for
that
this cycle. So we're not running
I'm
we haven't
getting there.
made any
I'm getting
decisions.
there, Matt. I'm getting there. Hold on.
Okay.
So we could be a disruptive force in the negative sense by using what we call the spoiler effect. I think we've referenced this already, but like it's, until Forward has enough membership, the only thing that we can do is mess up a bunch of other elections on the national level. So that's one of the reasons why we focus on local elections only and local elections first. That may change in the future if we get more of a membership and we have more of a presence and we feel like we can actually do something at that level. That may change, but for right now, the only thing that we can do is spoil an election, and we don't want to be in that position. So therefore, it is our policy to only run local elections, to only worry about the state legislatures, the state, the state courts, the state Senate, the cities, the councils, all of the things that are Maryland sourced, in our case.
okay, has
That's why
this
you don't see candidates at the national level.
right? Has the state had its convention yet? Because usually when an additional party forms, there's usually like that party's constitution or bylaws have to get established.
We're
And
not there yet. We're not there
okay,
yet. We have
okay,
to get the signatures collected and we have to get them approved by the Board of Elections first. So we're not even anywhere near ready to have a convention. And then yes, we will have to get 25 members of the board and we will have to have bylaws and we will have to have all that kind of stuff. And yeah, but we're not there yet.
how far are you away from it?
Well, that's a hard question to answer.
We have a path to get enough signatures to be on the ballot by this fall. Now, that requires getting enough donations to be able to support the effort that it goes through. So we are actually running a campaign around Leap Year right now. So we call it Leap Forward. And we've got a variety of different things that we are looking for supporters that can help us to raise enough money, to get enough action out there, to get the signatures that we need. So that's a big thing. That's, it's possible and potential, but it's going to take a bunch of work, but we're willing to put in the work.
Okay, and I am going to go to some of the comments. We just got two here. It says, what you are describing are pragmatics. I consider myself one. One big thing about us is that we do not affiliate with a group for a reason. It directly conflicts our issues-based nature.
Yes. And we see a bunch of that as well. Pragmatists, are some of our best fans in many ways. And if we have our way as well, one of the things we don't want to see is in the current system, you have to go and register as a Democrat in order to participate in the Democratic primary. You have to go and register as a Republican in order to participate in the Republican primary. We would like to see that you could be an independent, and then when it comes around to time to vote for your candidates, you don't have to register and affiliate with a party. You can just vote for them. Now, there's different stages of this. You can't have people voting in multiple different, elections and primaries. That might cause some issues. That's where we get into this idea of having the single primary. That actually, if you had a single primary, anybody, pragmatists, independents, libertarians, Green, Democrats, Republicans, everybody can vote for the person that they want to vote for without having to say, oh, I am affiliating with that party officially. And that's the way we think things should be run.
Right.
At least you all get that option.
We don't want independents necessarily to have to affiliate with the Forward Party. We want them to remain what they want to be, which is independent, and still be able to participate in the primary system.
I'm like, at least you all have that option. In our state, it's only Democrat, Republicans. The Libertarian Party.
We don't have that option. That is one of our changes that we
I wasn't making that point. I was trying to get to another one. So what I'm saying is, in Indiana, you can only register as a Democrat or Republican. The Libertarians, even though they're registered, they hit that 5%. They are not allowed, and I said allowed, to be on the primary ballot.
No, the same thing is here in Maryland. Only Democrats and Republicans participate in the primary, and only Democrats and Republicans are on the ballot for the primary. That's the same situation, and that's what we're trying to change.
Yeah, understood. And that just says, okay, so if I'm Libertarian, which I'm not, and I want to vote for Libertarians in the primary, well, I can't. I either have to vote Democrat, which I don't want to do, and I have to vote Republican.
The Libertarians, so the additional parties are outside the primary system, so they're
outside it. But if I'm in those, I guess my point is, if I'm in one of the additional parties and I want to vote in the primary, then I got to vote for what I call two bad choices.
Well, yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you have that right to go and register as a Democrat or a Republican and go and vote in the primary, even though you're a Libertarian, and then change your party affiliation afterwards again, and vote in the Libertarian.
No, that's why I like the open primary idea, because it's like, well, why should I even have to register? Just let me vote for who I want to vote for.
And we're differentiating between. I didn't use the term open primaries on purpose because Virginia, which is close to us, has an open primary system, and open primaries is not the full solution we're looking for, because open primaries just means that you have a Democrat primary and a Republican primary, and anybody can choose to vote in either one.
Okay, that's not what I meant. Okay,
that's exactly my point.
Okay, thank you again for the clarification. See, I'm getting a lot of clarification now. I just feel like, Tracy, you're not the brightest, but that's okay. I'll get over it.
No, you're fine. We've just done a lot of research. That's all.
The phrase that we learned was single primary. That seems to be the one.
Single primary. Thank you.
Very easy to understand. Single primary. Everybody's in the same primary.
Right.
Thank you. So Mac has a question that's different. Does the Forward Party see the need to advocate a revolutionary in science, considering the failure of the previous generations to protect species from extinction, such as the ivory billed woodpecker bird and the Hawaiian honey creeper bird, species that were in recent years proposed to be declared extinct by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services.
So as a
Didn't expect
biologist,
that question, but go
as a
ahead.
biologist, I'll take this one. Because that's my background is biology, and I really appreciate the question, and I'm going to have to deflect it a little bit. So forgive me in advance, because this is a policy question. This comes down to the candidates in our in the way that we think about things. This comes down to the candidates. If it so starting at the beginning, we have our principles, which we talked about, RCV or something like it. Single primaries and independent redistricting commissions. That's done at the national level. We adopted it here in Maryland as well, obviously. After that, we talked a little bit about problems, and Pete's on the priorities committee. So we're going to be establishing what the state priorities are. And so we'll talk about what those problems are and how to rank those problems. We haven't gotten there yet. We're still in the process of doing that. But when it comes down to whether or not you advocate for a specific revolution in science, you're down to the candidate. And so candidates control their own policy in the forward system. So our candidates will agree to the principles, and Maryland candidates will agree to the priorities. But if they have something beyond that, so they have a lot of flexibility to define their own policies that they want to support. And that's one of the beauties of Forward is we don't have a platform that says plank 1, plank 2, plank 3, plank 4, plank 5. If you don't believe in all of them, then you're out. We don't do that. Okay. We expect and we hope for different candidates to have different opinions. That goes back to the diverse thinking that Pete was talking about in the first place. So we expect and we hope that the voters are educated enough to choose the right candidate based on that candidate's policies. So why am I not answering this question directly? Because one, we haven't discussed it as to whether or not it's a state priority yet. Although as a biologist, I think it's an incredibly important priority, but I don't speak for the whole party in that case. That's just for myself. But also, we don't have any candidates that would advocate for this one way or the other, and I see this more as a policy issue.
I'll give a similar but different response in this category. So I also would love to see this, come about. Very much, you can tell from my background that I'm very much, enamored with, the protecting the earth and environments and a bunch of those different issues that go into that. So it comes down to this issue of if we're not going to dictate a platform, if we're not going to dictate a solution and a way that we do stuff, how do we keep people from just doing anything? How do we keep people aligned? How do we make sure that the politicians that we put forward are actually going to solve the problems that the people in our state care about? And that's where it comes back around to this problem that we were talking about. And so we have this technique called a pep talk. It stands for prioritized epic problems. And we've done a few prototypes of this so far. Environment came up, and education and science came up, and it was talked about there. And so we are going through and we're using this technique to raise up these problems and understand where each of these problems sit when it comes to the population inside of Maryland. And then we go to our candidates and say, all right, so this is what the people care about. How can you solve this? Tell the people of Maryland how you would solve these issues, because they're telling you they care about this. This is why they want to elect. They want to elect somebody who's going to solve these problems. So just tell them how you're going to solve those problems. And if you don't solve that problem or you make those problems worse, then you're not aligning with the priorities of the Forward Party, which are aligned with the priorities of the people of Maryland. And so that's how we can provide this thing without pinning things down in. Because one thing that we do find out is that the priority may be environment, and you may have 3 different ideas about how to solve our environmental problems or how to solve our problems with extinction and various different things. And we'll often see those three people who all care about the environment and who all care about extinction and these different processes fighting each other about, no, I want my way. No, I want to do it my way. No, I want to do it my way. And none of the bills get passed. And that's one of the things that we're trying to disrupt. That's one of the things that we are trying to break down, is to say what's most important is that we solve the problem. We might have three great ways to solve it. We may have three ways that, and some of them aren't as great, but let's test it out. Let's try it. Let's see what works. The proof is in the pudding. But everybody's got to solve those problems, or else you're not aligned with the Forward Party priorities.
Thank you. And last question. How can people connect to the Maryland Forward Party?
Oh, that's easy. So go to marylandforwardparty.com and you can see all about us. So you'll see the petition there. You'll see the candidate pledge under the About Us section. You'll see how to get involved under the, I think it's called Get Involved section. You'll see all the merchandise we have. We have these cool shirts that Pete and I got. You can make a donation in the donate area. And please, we'd love donations for our Leap Forward campaign. We are trying to collect, as Pete said, enough cash together so that we can get the signatures, so that we can become a recognized party in the state. And so we're asking for $29 donations from everybody because it's, February 29th, Leap Forward. Get it.
I mean, you can give more if you want to give more than $29, but
And in addition to, yes, you can absolutely give more, but every time somebody makes a donation toward that campaign, the board has already put in a match of $7,000. So we're hoping that you'll spend our money. So if people contribute $7,000, we'll pay $7,000. So that is coming out of our own pocket. That's how committed we are to this effort. And so we hope that you enjoyed talking with us this evening and that you learned something. And if you have any other questions, you can feel free to email us at maryland@forwardparty.com.
Thank you to everyone that tuned in for this special Saturday edition of the Tracy Show. Remember, I did not do a Silly Saturday show today because I had some last minute things come up, but I will do that next week. Join me Tuesday when the Tracy Show resumes its normal schedule. The whole month of February, we are talking to comedians, stand-up comics. We'll continue that. And then Thursday for our normal political discussion. Remember to like this page, comment on this page, share this page, share this page, share this page. The more shares we get, the more likes we get, the more I can get to my goal of at least 250 subscribers by the time April ends, so that I can have more additional party candidates on the show. Thank you all. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tracy. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Tracy.